Hey guys, welcome to Do the Change podcast, where we're challenging and reimagining occupational and environmental health sciences. In this podcast, we focus on upcoming and current leaders in their field and dive into how they got to where they are today and their advice for those interested in the field. My name is Joanne Tay, and I'm a current undergraduate here at Berkeley, and our guest for this episode is Simon Camponuri. Hi, Simon.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm glad to meet you. So let me introduce you real quick. So Simon Campanuri is an MPH here at the Environmental Health Sciences Division School at UC Berkeley. So he's a current PhD candidate, and he is focusing on the environmental and occupational epidemiology of valley fever in the United States. He received his MPH from UC Berkeley in environmental health sciences, where he analyzed the impact of precipitation and temperature on the seasonal transmission patterns of valley fever in California. In his doctoral research, Simon is continuing to examine the myriad influences of the environment on valley fever epidemiology. So, how are you today, Simon?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in California.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little tired. Just got back from a conference last night, so.
Oh man.
But
Where are you right now? It looks pretty outside.
I am on the courtyard of the public health building patio.
Oh, Berkeley Way West.
Yeah.
I see. It's quite hot today though.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I just got back from Texas where it was hot and humid, so this feels great.
Yeah, that's true. So why don't we start by you telling me maybe some of your journey into environmental health sciences?
Sure. Yeah. Where to begin? Um, yeah, I guess. Um, like I don't know, like many people who end up in an MPH program, I think a lot of people start out pre-med and then decide to do like, maybe if they're interested more in population health than in individual health, or I think people have all kinds of reasons, but I also started out pre-med and found that I liked thinking about systems thinking a bit more, and I also just liked the people who were doing, I guess, more broad population level um science, and I kind of found myself getting into the ecology world, and I did started working doing a bunch of research on wildlife ecology, and just looking at how climate change and droughts and things are impacting wildlife species in California, and all kinds of human animal interactions. And then I was working down in Central California on a research team, and we were trapping and marking and monitoring the populations of giant kangaroo rats, and which was a very fun experience. They're nocturnal, so it was kind of tough field work in terms of, for going out and working all night long and then sleeping during the day. But I during that we were at a team of five of us, and three people caught valley fever while we were working. And so, we were looking at all these different parts of the, different species and things in the ecosystem, but like clearly there was like a microbial part of the ecosystem that we weren't really paying attention to and weren't aware of. And so I was lucky enough to not be one of those, like one of the two that did not get valley fever. But that, sparked my interest in the fact that, pathogens exist in the ecosystems that we operate in, and kind of I was motivated to try and understand where they occur, how people get sick, and hopefully prevent folks from getting sick. And so I took some time off, and my path was a little meandering. But then I came back, and now it worked out very well that my advisor now got funding to research valley fever, and I had some personal experience with it. So I'm excited and very happy to be back in that space.
That's awesome. That's kind of funny to me because I'm currently a pre-med student and many people I know are as well. So like,
Yeah.
what was the timeline of you kind of switching gears and like deciding like, hey, like this is what I wanted to do? Like, when did you start getting interested in climate and ecology?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I started out pre-med in undergrad and took all of the pre-med classes. But found, I think I was surrounded by a lot of really hyper competitive people. I think pre-med at Berkeley can be really competitive. And I didn't like that atmosphere or that energy. And I think people weren't excited about what they were doing. Felt more like there was pressure to compete and succeed rather than they were really like, interested and empathetic and caring about people and wanting to make people healthier. I don't know. I think I didn't particularly enjoy that. So I kind of found myself gravitating towards people who were excited about what they were doing, and that I think that energy is infectious and makes you excited about whatever you're doing. So I just tried to surround myself with people like that. And that those people tended to be more in the ecology space. So that's kind of what pulled me in that direction.
I see. So you did undergrad at Berkeley.
I did, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. The pre-med culture here at Berkeley is kind of different. I feel like, yeah. So how did you go from like just being friends with people who were interested in ecology and then like end up in doing the kangaroo rats research?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I yeah, well, I was taking, I think the there are kind of two majors at Berkeley that for bio, there's like molecular and cell bio and integrative bio. And I don't know if you have to pick. I don't pick early on. I ended up being picking IB, like integrative bio because it was a little more like macro scale and ecology, and I liked those people more. And the professors were, I felt like they were more interested in students and teaching and kind of inspiring the next generation of scientists. Or just, they're the ones who took the time to talk to me as a lowly undergrad. So that felt good. And then, I started taking those classes. I ended up, I think I applied for a URAP position, which is like a undergraduate research apprenticeship program. Um, After I had been working in two research groups, one looking at like squirrel behavior and like cognition and how squirrels like navigate the spaces that they're in, and then another research group looking at the impact of a road closure in Berkeley. There's a famous, maybe not famous, famous at the time, um, road in the Berkeley Hills that they close every winter to cars. And it's primarily because there's a newt migration across the road. And so
Wow.
they don't want all the newts to get run over by the cars. And so I was there was a professor who, so I guess the way that the policy worked with the road closure is that they would close the road on a certain day every year. I think it was sometime in November they would close the road and then reopen it sometime in the spring. But climate patterns don't really follow our calendar. And so the newts would queue into like whenever the first rains come, and then they would start to migrate. And so that could be before the road was closed. And so we were going out after the first rain, but before the road was closed, and collecting roadkill newts that had been hit by cars and trying to basically collect all these samples to show that, they changed that policy and try and get the road to close on the first rain rather than a set day for the year. Um, so anyways, I was doing that, and then I applied for this position with Justin Brashares here he's in ESPM, Environmental Science Policy and Management at Berkeley, and he's a big wildlife ecologist, and he was doing this research on kangaroo rats, and it sounded awesome. And so I started working with a on that project and kind of ended up working on that for 2 years. doing a bunch of different things, lots of like wildlife field work and also like in wet lab research and lots of things.
That's really cool. Really tried your hand at a lot of different labs.
It's yeah, I did. I don't know. I think I was trying to, I don't know, get a breadth of experiences, and I don't know. I part of that was just like the excitement, and that I think I wasn't felt that energy from the people around me who were just excited about what they were doing, and so I wanted to do it all the time.
Wait, that's really nice. There's a lesson to be learned here about surrounding yourself with the people who share your passions.
Definitely, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what happened? Oh, at the kangaroo rats. Where did you go to research the kangaroo rats again?
So our field site was in the Carrizo Plain National Monument, which is it's in eastern San Luis Obispo County, like more close to Bakersfield, I would say, kind of on the edge of Kern County, like maybe an hour and a half west of Bakersfield.
That's really cool. Field work that's far away. That is that far away as an undergrad.
Yeah, it was I worked there for the summer, and it was like driving up and down from Berkeley somewhat regularly, and it's like a 5 hour drive each
Oh my
way.
goodness.
A lot of car time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was your first like run-in with valley fever, right?
That was, yeah, yeah. I hadn't heard of it before then, but
What happened after? How did it stay in your life after that?
a little, I mean, yes and no. I think that was a very impressional experience. And I think many other members or other researchers who have done work in the Carrizo Plain specifically have also gotten valley fever. And so I think, now I know that that's very prominent, but it's also because I research it now. Um, but yeah, I think, coming out of undergrad, I still didn't know if I wanted to go to med school or if I wanted to go to veterinary school. I'd been doing all this wildlife stuff and thought it might be cool to be a wildlife vet, um, or go into research. And everyone I talked to basically just told me to go work and go out into the world. If you're not sure what you want to do, don't keep doing school. Like go get some experience and like see what you like and what you don't like and what jobs you might want to have and which ones you don't. And I so I did that. I went and I worked at a veterinary clinic after undergrad, and which was very fun, and I learned a lot and got a lot of really cool hands-on skills that I don't think I would have been able to do if I was working in human medicine. But then that also helped me realize that I didn't want to become a vet, which was very useful information. Um, and then my girlfriend at the time, now wife, got into grad school on the East Coast, and so we moved to Connecticut, and I worked doing research at the Yale Medical School while my wife was in grad school there. And then after that, I started my master's at Berkeley, and now I stayed for the PhD.
I see, I see. So you had more of like an untraditional path where you kind of took your time, did collected experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you? Oh yeah, sorry, go
Guess
ahead.
like untraditional path is, I find that like everyone has an untraditional path or kind of like they find their ways into their spaces in, you know, it's rarely you meet someone who has known what they want to do since they were 4 years old and have just done that. I think everybody kind of just tries and explores and, finds themselves excited
Yeah,
by things and pursuing those.
yeah, that's good insight. Would
Yeah.
you recommend the same thing, like going out to pursue these working experiences to those who like maybe just graduated undergrad and are kind of uncertain?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. I guess if you don't know what you want to do, then yes. I think that's, yeah, I think work experience is really valuable. I think both having kind of done, I guess, a couple graduate degrees now. I'm on my second one, and having like gone through my life's experience of being in grad school, I have met a lot of people, both who came straight through undergrad and kept in school, and people who took time off. And I kind of have the sense that people who took time off have a better idea of what they want to get out of grad school, and like the skills that they want to develop and how it will help them in their career, and kind of know what to prioritize, I guess, in terms of like what is work that is just important because it's school, and what is work that's important because it will actually benefit you and your, skills long term. So I guess I think it makes people maybe a little bit more well-rounded, but that's not to say that some people coming out of, undergrad into grad school know what they want to do, um, but yeah, just a general pattern I guess I've observed.
Yeah, that's great insight, actually. I feel like many undergrads can get kind of caught up in the idea of following the timeline, following like the tunnel straight into like grad school or straight into med school.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah, it's easy to forget like there's much more experiences to be gained from like the wider world.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it was particularly difficult for people graduating undergrad in 2020 when I started my master's program, because in that sense, I would say going and doing grad school makes a lot of sense because it's, not a lot is going on in the world. And I mean, I guess in the public health space, there were a lot of cool things that you could be doing in terms of contact tracing and helping with the COVID response. But also I totally understand the impulse to go to school at that time. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, the working the space was, I guess, more challenging to be in.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So after you came back to Berkeley for your grad school, what did you enter in focusing on?
Sorry, we can repeat the question.
Sorry, I phrased that kind of weirdly. When you entered Berkeley again for your first master's,
Hmm.
what did you like focus on? What were you thinking of at the time? Like, what was your research interest?
Yeah, I guess I came in interested in like zoonotic disease. I had all this wildlife experience, and um, was really interested in how, you know, and I had applied wanting to do zoonotic disease work before COVID happened, and so it felt even more important during that, that pandemic. But and I kind of the person who I work with Justin Remaze, and I think he's one of the main people, at least at the School of Public Health, who has research on like wildlife-borne diseases and zoonotic diseases. And so wanted to work with him, and then he had just gotten a bunch of funding to study valley fever, which I had experience with. So I ended up joining his research group. I actually started working with them before I even started the master's program. I had applied and gotten accepted, and then over the summer before I started the master's program, I started working with Justin's group, and doing research and helping out where I could. And then ended up staying with Justin's group throughout my master's program. So all my research pretty much was on valley fever at that time, and continues to be about valley fever. Um, but yeah, so I think broadly, maybe my interests have shifted since then. I'm definitely still interested in zoonotic disease, and I guess I should say that we think that the fungus that causes valley fever is carried by rodents, and there's a growing body of evidence to suggest that rodents are important hosts for the fungus. So um, it's cool to have that still be a part of my research, and be able to, still think about wildlife and have to be important factors of the disease system. But I think my like main interests have shifted maybe more towards climate and health broadly, and maybe like a little bit less away. I'm not necessarily dedicated to working on zoonotic diseases, though those are also impacted by climate, but more generally just diseases that are environmentally influenced, or influenced by climate. and or also just like health outcomes that are influenced by climate. So like there's so many that I could list, but
Mhm.
arguably, like I would say maybe almost every health outcome is somehow influenced by climate.
Yeah, that's true. That makes a lot of sense. I was thinking like in the recent years, every time I hear about valley fever, it's always been in like conjunction with discussing climate change, like how it's like a marker of how the seasons are shifting, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a good, I mean, I think for many ways, for many reasons, it's a good um example. And like I'm really happy that I'm getting my like PhD training focusing on valley fever because there are a lot of parts of it that are, you know, a great case study or study system for learning about climate and health methods. But there are also some ways that it's not perfect, and it's like really hard to detect the fungus in the environment, and are like are there's pretty low awareness of the disease, and so we don't not everyone goes and gets healthcare, and we're pretty like it's pretty underreported. So our like estimates of the number of cases, I think CDC estimated that they were like, oh, like 30 times, or I'm gonna mess up the number. It's some wild times lower than the actual burden of disease. So
I see, I see. Yeah, I actually never heard of valley fever prior to like joining COEH in the first place. So like
yeah.
it is very not that well known. So I actually wanted to ask you, how
Mhm.
do you guys like since you do all your research on valley fever, how do you guys communicate like the results of your research to those who like need it most, like those who are working in agriculture, like in the field?
Yeah, this is a huge question. And I it's something I also feel like I'm learning and trying to do a better job of. I think it's sometimes it can be, I think there are great efforts and great research projects where like that there are built-in community engagement parts to them, and in those cases, there's direct communication of the results to the community, and I appreciate those projects a lot. Our research doesn't necessarily have a built-in like community engagement part of it. We do, however, have a pretty close collaboration with the California Department of Public Health. And so they let us use some of their data, and also we do our analyses and then share those with CDPH, and then they generate a bunch of public awareness um, materials based on our findings. So for example, this past one of our main research findings was that um, droughts follow like I guess heavy rainfall during the winter following a drought leads to a huge spike in cases in the fall season, so like September, October, November. And we saw a drought in 2000 to 2022, and then a lot of rain in the winter of 2022. And so based on our findings and our collaboration with CDPH, they put out a bunch of warnings that the risk of valley fever was going to be really high in 2023, and that we're probably going to see a lot of cases. And so they did a bunch of public awareness work and also physician awareness, so the physicians would know to test for it and hopefully improve the diagnosis of the disease. And then we did see a huge spike in cases, so it was like a little validating that our results are true, but also unfortunate that a lot of people got sick. Um, so that's like I guess the main way that we communicate our results is so directly to our state partners. I guess other ways our group does a fair amount of conference presentations to communicate it to the research community. That's not necessarily the community itself, but the impacted community. But we also work with or have done a lot of media interviews. So there was recently a Washington Post article highlighting our work, and there's been some grist pieces on it, and so kind of those like popular media sources have also highlighted our work. But I wish that we had maybe a more direct way of kind of communicating with those people who are at risk and impacted, like construction workers and agriculture workers and people working outside who are exposed to dust.
Yeah, congrats on the Washington Post, by the way. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, this one they came on a field sampling trip with us that I unfortunately had to miss, but it seemed like they got some good photos of us working in the field.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like communicating the research results to the actual workers who are like who need it, the construction workers and agriculture workers, seems to be the one of the biggest drawbacks of EHS in general. I see that with many other aspects of EHS. Do you agree that this is like kind of a drawback in the field in general?
Yeah, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. I think some researchers do a great job and have really close collaborations with groups of agricultural workers or groups of construction workers. I think I would maybe say that like there's a broaden it beyond EHS. I think that maybe EHS is one of the fields that does a better job compared to other research fields at communicating their results, just because I think there is somewhat of a growing culture of community engagement. And you know, I think there's increasing prioritization of having community partners that you communicate your results with. But I think it's probably just a general problem of in academia of like all research trying to be better about communicating our results with the general public. Um, and yeah, I think research can sometimes just stay in the research field and stay in a journal somewhere and not get communicated through other routes. So
Yeah, that sounds much more correct than what I was saying. Forgive my ignorance. You're right.
oh
It's
no,
more
no,
about the
no,
academia.
no, it's unfortunate, and I don't know. I think that everyone I don't know. I think I could do a better job. I think a lot of researchers could maybe put more effort into trying to communicate to those who are directly impacted.
hmm Yeah, well, I guess podcasts, like even stuff like this podcast, is a way of trying to accomplish that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, I hope so.
Hopefully. I actually also wanted to ask. So you mentioned that like the Washington Post came and then joined you guys on like a day out on the field. So I wanted to ask you like what does your regular day-to-day work look like?
It's a good question. It's somewhat varied, which is something that I like about what I do, and I think is true maybe for a lot of environmental health scientists. I think there are opportunities to go out in the field and sample and measure whatever you're looking at. So for us, we do a fair amount of soil sampling to look because the fungus that causes valley fever grows in the soil, and so we're taking soil samples from different parts of the environment, particularly at rodent burrows and surface soils, and looking for patterns in where we can detect fungus. So that is a fun part of it. I wouldn't say it's the day to day. It's, we take a trip every spring and fall to collect soil samples. So it's, once, twice a year. And,
Mhm.
but, those days are very fun.
Yeah, do you normally go to like spots that you already have identified as like this is like the soil collecting spot, or do you just like find a new rodent burrow?
Yeah, right now we're going back to the same spots. We're trying to track these spots over time to see if there are changes. And so yeah, we've been sampling from the same spots for the last, this will be our fourth year, I think, maybe fourth year, um, collecting every spring and fall. So, yeah, we're trying to measure it over time. But
Mhm.
outside of those field sampling seasons, most of my day to day is a lot of data analysis. I do a lot of work with the valley fever is a reportable disease in California, and so every case that's diagnosed by the physician or a lab is required to be reported to the state. And so I have access to that data of all reported cases. And so we do a lot of analyses looking at how using that as our outcome data and then looking at how different factors influence when people are getting infected. So a
Yeah,
lot of data analysis.
awesome. So
A lot of
most of
time
your
involved.
Most of your days are just kind of spent indoors grinding away.
Somewhat, yeah, yeah. But I enjoy it. I enjoy all the aspects of it. So
hmm Awesome. Is there any like specific, so like you said you guys enjoy all those aspects. Is there like any part that you like dislike most?
dislike most? Oh, oh, that's a good question. Uh, I don't know. I think I maybe writing. I don't really like writing that much.
I think this is a popular answer if you ask many researchers.
Yeah, it's more fun to do the work than to write it up. I don't know. I think maybe yeah, I think it kind of goes in flows. Like sometimes you're doing a lot of data analysis, and sometimes, and then as you do it, you like doing that more, and sometimes you do a lot of writing, and as you write more, that part of your brain has a little bit more practice, and so you start to enjoy it more. But I don't know. It's the thing I probably like the least is writing.
Hey guys, this is Joanne Tay, your host for this episode, and we have reached the end of part 1 of this conversation with our wonderful guest. Don't click out yet because part 2 of this conversation has already been posted, so check out our page to finish the conversation. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify and Instagram at Do the Change Podcast.